Hello friends, my name is Claire, and today we are talking about how I handle air travel with my autism diagnosis, so please stick around. Hi friends, my name is Claire and this is my channel, Woodshed Theory. Here I talk about what it is like to live as an adult on the autism spectrum and whatever else feels good to me. So if that sounds good to you, or if you're feeling particularly gracious today, and I hope that you are, please go ahead and click the subscribe button. Ring the bell. I believe last time I checked we were at 450 subscribers, so I am very excited about that. I'm trying to get to 1,000, so thank you very much. It means a lot to me. Did I mention I put out videos 3 times a week? It has been a strange day, y'all. I went to check the mail and there was a dying baby raccoon in our driveway. Just lying there, and he was still alive and in a lot of pain and suffering. So we went ahead and called animal control, and to their credit, they came out right away. They were there in probably 30 minutes. But unfortunately, they did have to put the little guy down, which, you know, I'm glad that they were there to do that because he was bleeding. I think he had gotten hit by a car and he was seizing pretty badly. So I'm glad that they were able to end his suffering, but not what I thought I'd be watching this morning. Thanks for letting me get that out. Onto the video. Air travel with autism can be really tough. There are a lot of factors that come into play. There's a lot of people, you have to go through security, and that feels like being pushed through a cattle processing plant. There is a lot of stimulation happening, too much stimulation. Then there are loud announcements, gate changes, connecting flights, worrying about missing flights, trying to find something you like to eat in the airport, being seated next to strangers on a flight, the dry air on the airplane, the sounds and the turbulence, the airplane bathroom, the airplane food, the snacks and the drinks, interacting with a bunch of people that you don't know. The list goes on and on. So I recently just got back from a very short trip, and come to think of it, it was the first time I have been on a flight since the December before quarantine started. December 2019, I believe, a long time. So my partner and I decided to do a quick weekend trip to go to a dear friend's wedding out of state. By the way, I'm fully vaccinated and I was masked up the entire airplane experience. So before you freak out and get worried about that, just know that we were both as careful as we possibly could be. Anyway, because I have not traveled in a long time, and this was even before my official ASD diagnosis, because I remember my last trip discussing the fact that I wanted to get a diagnosis with my mother. So it's been a while since I was on a flight. And because of that, I kind of wanted to reflect on traveling for me as a person on the spectrum, and also to give you some wins that I had on the trip and some tips that I had for you if you're also ASD, and also a fail that I need to be cognizant of and prepare for next time as I grow as a person and as I seek to capitalize on my autism as opposed to letting it hinder me as a person. A few wins from the trip. Overall, the travel aspect of the trip went really well for me. I was able to go about the trip without over planning or over stressing, which in the past had been a big issue for me as somebody who's on the spectrum. As someone with ASD, we love to overplan and over-research because it makes us feel more comfortable in unfamiliar surroundings. When I was first starting to travel solo as a late teen, I would have everything planned down to crossing my T's, dotting my I's, etc. I would look up the maps of airports before I got there, find my gate, figure out what was around the airport, figure out where I was landing, and look up that airport map too. I am not saying that it is abnormal to figure out where you're going or what's going to be there, but my experience was a little bit more next level as I was micromanaging to help quell my anxiety around traveling. Now, as a more experienced traveler, I understand that there are screens and signs everywhere in the airport, and that airports are designed to be as easy to navigate as possible and efficient as possible. So I guess my first piece of advice is don't panic and just take some time to take in your surroundings, and there are people around to ask for help if you need, but you don't need to spend hours and hours preparing to step into an airport. They're designed so that you don't have to do that. In general, I think it is okay to pre-plan to make oneself more comfortable with the travel experience. It's normal to look up what airport you're going to, what terminal you'll need to go to, think about where you're going to park your car for the time being. But anything past that in the airport, they're pretty much on top of, and you don't really need to get into. As long as you have your boarding pass and your ID, you are pretty much on autopilot for the rest of the way. So my advice is not to overplan if you can. General planning is normal, but something like knowing where every single bathroom is in an airport before you get there, not so normal, maybe not so necessary. Should I say that these are just my opinions and whatever helps you is fine? I'm just sharing my experience. Another thing that I have found that has helped me as an ASD person on flights is sometimes it's worth the extra money to get a direct flight. So yes, when I was younger, I didn't really think about direct flights. I was more concerned about getting the cheapest price possible on flights. Now I've learned that it is worth paying a little extra to get the experience over as quickly as possible. The more time you are exposed to the experience, the more draining it will be, and the more likely it will be that a meltdown will happen. Also, I have found that with layovers, you end up spending that extra money anyway that you thought you would be saving on things like coffee, drinks, snacks while you're in the airport. So in the end, it's not really an actual savings, and it's just going to take you more time, more stress along your trip. Get the direct flight if you can. For the sake of brevity, I think I can lump the rest of my advice into be kind to yourself. Know going into it that air travel is an overwhelming experience for autistic people, and give yourself some grace. Keep reminding yourself to breathe and that this experience is temporary and will be over in the next few hours, hopefully. You may want to bring some noise-canceling headphones or just regular headphones so that you can be watching a program or on your phone, just to be focusing on something else during your time in the airport or during the flight. It's also okay for you to get to the airport a little bit early to give yourself some time to get through security, find your gate, and get settled into your situation. Which brings me to my next point, which is what I failed on. So the biggest fail that I had on the trip was surrounding me. So I can own up to that. I can say that out loud. We were cutting it a little close for our flight, and I kind of went into that eyes glazed over, total focus, shut everything else down, shut down is imminent, autism mode. if you have autism, you probably know what I'm talking about. I believe in the past it would have been a lot worse, but from the time that we left to drive to the airport to the time that we were finally on the plane, I don't think I said much to my husband other than to apologize for my behavior. I find that when very stressed out, which is not hard for me to get to that point, I can stop communicating with the people around me. It's funny because inside I feel fine. I just feel extremely hyper-focused on the task at hand. And in that moment, that seems to be the right thing to do because I don't want to miss my flight or have something go wrong. But I know to the outside world, it just appears that I have shut off and that I'm being rude or short and not being very nice to my partner or whoever I'm traveling with. So I know this would have been solved if we were able to get to the airport earlier, but that wasn't possible at this time, and that's not always possible because life happens. I think what I've learned is I need to really internally slow down and take stock of my own behavior so that I don't lose myself to my anxiety and end up regretting my behavior later. Because you know what? Everything was fine. We made the flight. We had time to pick up dinner to take on the plane, time to use the restroom, and we didn't have to wait for a long time in the terminal to get onto the flight. So everything went fine. My reaction to the situation wasn't necessary. So that's kind of my fail and where I think that I can really grow and do better next time. I need to make sure that I'm not letting myself freak out when things aren't going perfectly to plan, and I know that that's hard for people on the spectrum. I know that I'm not always going to be comfortable, and that doesn't mean that I can be a jerk to the people around me. That's one thing that I learned or was reminded of on this trip that I need to be more careful about in the future. But overall, the flights went fine, the travel went fine. There's just some things that I kind of wanted to talk to y'all about and reminisce about because this was my first flight since being diagnosed, and I think I handled it a lot better than I would have in the past, which I'm grateful for. As far as the trip went great, got to see some old friends, and I definitely slept for an entire day when I got home, but I'm so happy that I went and that I pushed myself through some social anxiety. It was totally worth it. And I'm hoping that as the world continues to open up and we get through this trying time for the world and our country, I'm able to travel and be so much less stressed about it, which I think is going to be awesome. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. How do you do with air travel as a person on the spectrum? What are your tips and tricks to making it an easier experience? And how is your week going? Hopefully you haven't had to call animal control like me. I hope that you have a wonderful Wednesday, and I hope that you come back for the video on Friday. I think it might be something fun. So please have a wonderful day, and I love you. You're important, and I will see you next time. Bye. Bye.